Hey, welcome to a very exciting video. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of my 2023 live rig. I'm playing live on the 23rd of September this year, and this will be my first time in 20 years on stage, except for a little brief appearance in 2017 where I did 5 minutes live on live television. But apart from that, it's 20 years since I last stood on a stage performing live. So I've put together a live rig I think will suit me the best. It's a very portable rig. I don't want to take out more than I actually need to get my sounds across, to get my signature sounds. So the rig will be a Roland Alpha Juno 2, the Sequential Prophet X. I have a Yamaha DX7s back here, and I have a Alesis SamplePad Pro, and I have a Macbook Air M1 here that will do drums and bass and some additional synths. I'm not taking that big screen out, it's only the laptop. And I have a PreSonus Studio Live 1602 USB that I will run everything through. What you don't see here right now is my guitarist who will do live guitars with me on stage. So we will be a two-person operation for this. So let me take you through the gear and how I've set this all up. So let's check out these two keyboards first. These will be my main keyboards during the live gig. And if you followed my videos lately, you know I've sampled a lot of my vintage synths into the Prophet X, so I can have all the sounds I need in a live situation coming from these patches within the Prophet X. I will do some additional playing on the Alpha Juno 2 as well, but most of the time I'm using the Prophet X. And I've set this up so on the playlist button here I have different sets for different sections of the song. So for instance, when I start up my first song, I just press this button here, or I'll leave it on that before we actually go on stage. And so this will be the first song in the set, which has a JX8P soundtrack patch. And the way I've set this up additionally is that when I choose the different songs in the playlist, the Alpha Juno 2 automatically goes to the right patch for that song if I'm also playing the Alpha Juno 2. So it's sending out program change messages from the Prophet X over to the Alpha Juno 2. The problem with that is that when I hook a MIDI cable out of the MIDI out into the MIDI in on the Alpha Juno 2 is that by playing the Prophet X, I would normally also play the Alpha Juno 2. That's how MIDI works. So to prevent that, I have this. The MIDI Solutions router, and I've programmed this so that when the program changes come from the Prophet X, it goes into that and gets routed out the usual way, out of the router and into the Alpha Juno 2. So it will change the patch as I've set it up. But I've also filtered out any note on messages. So when I play on the Prophet X, those note ranges will be automatically filtered out of the router. So out of the router is no notes at all. It only bypasses or only passes through the program change messages. Very flexible and very nice to have that addition, so I can use these two with a simple MIDI cable. I will not play the Alpha Juno 2 from the Prophet X, except when I do this, I can change the patch here. So this is my track Hot Pursuit. And here's the lead sound for that. So I'm not playing that patch from here, but I can use the mod wheel and pitch bender because I've let that through the MIDI router. And I've set this up so that if something should happen to the pitch bend wheel here during the live performance, it breaks or whatever, I can take over using the pitch bend and mod wheel here. So it's just a safety measure so that I have the ability to use the wheels here on the Alpha Juno 2, because a lot of the sounds played on the Alpha Juno 2 are lead sounds where I want to have some articulation coming from the mod wheel and the pitch bend wheel here. So MIDI router to the rescue. And again, it's only a matter of pressing the playlist here. Those Days, Cole's Revenge, etc. And the patches will change on the Alpha Juno 2, so I don't have to faff around with that. The only thing I have to do additionally is that I have to set the transpose to the proper range for each of the patches in the Prophet X, because the transpose button is not part of a playlist, so I have to do that manually. That's the only thing I have to remember. So I'll have a little cheat note. So if I forget, I can look at the cheat note and remember where I have to set the octave +1 for some of the patches. Most of the patches has the octave on the +1 anyway, so well, it's up to me to remember that. And in addition to the Prophet X and the Alpha Juno 2, I have this Yamaha DX7s. And I'm running this through the Zoom MS-70 CDR with some chorus delay and reverb, a custom patch. I recently did a video about this. I think this pedal is fantastic, and it's perfect to take out on gigs like this, where it really just blends in with the DX7s sound, and I can't think of any pedal or reverb box I would rather take out as a companion to the DX7s for my live gigs here. Some love this, some hate it. I don't care, I love it. And the DX7s is only set up with one sound. I'm using only this sound throughout the entire gig. So when I'm using the DX7s, you will be hearing this sound. So I don't have to change patches or faff around with program changes or anything like that. This is the patch. And this is the Alesis SamplePad Pro. And I got this for two reasons. One, I wanted something cool happening on stage once in a while, something like a visual treat for the audience. And so I'm going to play this a little bit during the performance, a couple of drum sounds, and the guitarist will also use this a couple of times during the performance. He doesn't play guitar on all the songs, so when he's not playing the guitar, he can do some fills on this sample pad. So I have 6 surfaces here, 6 pads and 2 up here, so a total of 8 pads. And I've loaded up my custom drum samples onto this kit. I only have one kit. Again, I don't want to faff around with too much technical stuff during the performance. I have to sing and play at the same time, so I have to cut down on everything else. So it's one user kit, and I have a couple of sounds here. So this is the tom sounds from the Golden Boy, which we're going to play. I have a snare drum from Midnight Drive 3. And yeah, so during the performance, I look forward to using this sample pad together with the guitarist. And this is the Macbook Air M1, which is going to do the drums, the bass, additional synths, and the vocal harmonies, backup harmonies during the live performance. You know from earlier videos this year that I've been toying around with different ideas for doing these backup tracks. I decided earlier that I wouldn't do any MIDI sequencing at all. That was my initial wish, but as a one-man band, it's just too much logistics doing live MIDI sequencing where I am right now from my position. So I have to do some audio backup tracks, and this is the solution I found worked out the best for me at this stage. So I'm using Cubase 11 here. This is the entire set, 13 songs, all lined up with transitions, everything that I want to have during the performance. So we're going to just play this from start to finish. I'm not using any EQ or compression on the tracks here. These are all pre-made, exported out from my original DAW sessions. But I am using a couple of additional reverb effects on my vocal harmonies, coming from a couple of Wave Alchemy reverb plugins. I did a couple of video reviews on them earlier, and I liked them so much that I'm using them as well in this session, only a few instances. And that means, of course, that it's all coming together here on this PreSonus Studio Live 1602 USB mixer. So what's happening, I'll take you through it, is that if you start here from the MacBook, I have all the drums coming in on this fader here, and all the backup music, bass, additional synths, vocal harmonies, etc. are coming in as a stereo track here, digitally from the DAW. So I can adjust the drums and the music here if I want to. Every track, all the songs in the DAW has been set up with its volume tailored as a whole in reference to the other tracks. So ideally, I won't have to touch this at all. These are all set up exactly where I want them in terms of volume coming from the DAW. So there's no automation or anything going on here. On track 11 and 12, or channel 11 and 12, I have the sounds from the Prophet X coming in. I'm using only internal effects on the Prophet X itself, so there's no additional effects on this fader. Here I'm having the output of the Zoom MS-70 CDR, which has a stereo output from the Yamaha DX7s. The Yamaha DX7s is a mono output, but coming out of the Zoom, it's stereo now, so this is coming in here on this channel. On channel 7 and 8, we have the Alpha Juno 2 coming up in stereo, and the Alpha Juno 2 is getting its effects from the PreSonus mixer itself. It has two independent effects processors, a plate reverb I've set up mostly for my vocals, but that plate reverb is also being sent to the Alpha Juno 2, and I also have a ping pong delay used on my voice and the Alpha Juno 2 as well. So both my voice and the Alpha Juno will be sharing these effects. It's working very well, as I've set this up especially tailored for this live gig. So that's coming up here. Again, everything is set up in the different synths. So in the Alpha Juno 2, all the patches I've programmed have their volumes programmed as well. So again, none of these faders will be necessary to move at all during the performance. It's all set up. On track 5 and 6, or channel 5 and 6, I've set up, and you can see it here, VHS. I'm using a VHS hi-fi stereo video as music backup. That means when I'm pressing play on the MacBook Air in the Cubase session, starting the live gig, I'm also starting manually this VHS stereo hi-fi recorder with all the music recorded as it is on the DAW. So if something happens to the computer during the live gig, I can just push these faders up to unity gain, and it should be within a couple of seconds synced up to where we are. So I thought that a couple of seconds off once during the performance is better than having to restart a computer, etc., etc. So I don't have any technicians going on the side helping me out on this. I have to do everything myself. So this is the best solution I found for this gig. And you might ask, why don't I use a more modern music backup device for playing this back, like a Zoom recorder or something like that? Well, I like to live a little bit dangerous, and I want to be a little bit retro on this. So it gives me a sort of evil pleasure knowing that I'm having a VHS stereo cassette deck as a backup here. So just call me James Bond. Okay, moving on. The guitarist have two channels here because I'm taking the output of the board he's using, the guitar board the guitarist is using, is coming out here. And again, all the patches on the pedal board of the guitarist has been programmed to fit the songs. So again, these faders will not be moved either. It's all set up, so we're not miking up any cabinets or something. The guitarist goes straight into the board and out of the board and into the PreSonus here. Of course, he has a backup guitar, but that's the only backup he has, so this better work as well. Channel 2, we have the Alesis drum pad. Mono only, no need to have that in stereo, although it is a stereo output, doing only mono. And on channel 1, it's my microphone. I'm singing on half of the songs, so the only thing I have to do here is to push this mute-unmute button during which songs needing a vocal or not. So that's the only thing I have to be careful about, is to remember to mute or unmute when it's needed / not needed. Ideally, I won't have to use or touch any of these faders during the performance. This is going out to front of house. I'm mixing everything on stage myself, so the front of house will get 2 lines, left and right, so they only control the total volume out. I don't want to have any sound engineer not knowing my music, mixing my vocals or instruments live, of course. What a disaster. That's not going to happen. So I'm controlling everything here. Front of house gets 2 lines. That's it. And that leaves the auxiliaries. And again, I chose this mixer here for these gigs. For our gigs, me and the guitarist. So it's 4 auxiliaries. So I'm using 2 auxiliaries for my monitoring purposes, and the guitarist has the other 2. So if we set up our own monitor mixes, of course, he prefers to hear a little bit more of the guitar, I assume, and I might want to hear a little bit more of my vocals. So on the back of the PreSonus here, we have 4 auxiliary outs, and 2 of them are going to his in-ear monitoring. He's using his own monitoring in-ear system, and I'm using mine, except I'm not using in-ear plugs. I hate in-ear plugs probed into my ears. I'm using a set of headphones, probably the Sennheiser HD25. So I'll look a little bit odd, but it's important for me to hear myself during the live gigs, of course, and I don't want to use wedges. So we have to use monitoring on our ears. So he's using in-ears, I'm using headphones, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. That's the way we want to do it. And yeah, so it works well. We've rehearsed with this for several months now. Not a hiccup, everything goes smooth as silk, and hopefully it will do so during the live performances as well. Well, this is basically my setup for these live gigs. Of course, the ergonomics, I'm not going to set it up like that on stage. This is just for rehearsal purposes now in the studio. I've not yet decided exactly how we're going to do this on stage in terms of placement, etc. But if you have questions or comments to this setup, please leave them in the comment section. I'm really not after suggestions on how I can do these things differently now. I've set this up the way I want it, but if you have questions in regards to the setup, please leave them in the comment section. I plan to have this first gig shot on several cameras, so I'll have a nice, juicy concert gig video afterwards, and I also hope to be able to stream this live when it's happening. It's Saturday, September 23rd, 9 p.m. Central European Time, but I'll link to that in the video description, and I'll make a couple of new videos before the gig, so you'll definitely be able to check this out live, hopefully, when it happens. So stay tuned on my channel for more updates on that one. And I plan to film or shoot a little bit of the last rehearsal with the guitarist as well. So maybe I'll tease a little bit on my channel on that. And apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully see some of you on the live gig. And if not, we'll see each other in the next video. So again, thanks for watching. Cheers.